17. Right hands. Dr. Kite cradles the strangelet like a baby. A good deal of his mind still hasn't registered that it's even in his hands. Its current purpose is not to be a form of matter unique to the known universe, but as a fidget toy to protect what remains of the man's hair. It's a good thing that it requires a special mechanism to open it, because his nervous fingers have tugged and picked at every crook, bolt, and crevice of the device, and they would have certainly found a way to bust it open by now. The door opens and Euler enters the room. He has a look on his cushiony face like he's just taken one of the best shits of his life. He shoots the doctor a slick, professional smile and cocks a thumb back over his shoulder. "The kid's on the hot seat if you still want to drill him," he says. "Whatever threat he might have posed, I'm confident it's been neutralized." Dr. Kite stands suddenly, realizing too late that he'd rather be sitting down. He fumbles with an odd little curtsy, ending by leaning against the wall as if that's what he planned to do all along. "Has he said anything about Eliza?" Euler shakes his head. "Far as that boy's willing to gush, your girlfriend's clean and squeaky. I smell chivalry, though." He looks off at faraway nothing with the hint of a bittersweet look in his eye. "Good to know that generation has some values, I guess." Kite nods and chuckles as if he'd been paying attention to that last part. "Uh-huh. And where is she?" Euler returns to the 21st century. "Oh, I have no idea." Kite almost drops the strangelet on the floor. "He didn't say anything?" "Well, no," Euler admits, laughing. "According to Boy Wonder, she's on the moon." Kite stares. "The what?" "He says aliens kidnapped her," Euler shrugs. "I don't want to fill your dome with unnecessary conjecture, but I would steel yourself for the worst if I were you." For Dr. Kite, time begins to slow. Deep in the pit of his gut, a little strangelet bomb of preemptive grief goes off. What kind of nutcase son of a bitch? And then he remembers the letter again. He cocks his head at Euler. "The moon." Euler nods noncommittally. "Gives a Fruit Loop." "What did he say exactly?" Euler squints at him again. "What's the difference, Dr. Kite?" Cassius waits for the answer to his question. The agent sighs. "He's going to tell you some shit about extraterrestrials, okay? He claims that they abducted the doctor just before we caught up to them. Honestly, it's probably best if you just leave the poor nut alone. Neither of you will get anything out of it." Kite's eyes widen. "Did they?" "Excuse me?" "Did aliens abduct her?" "Aw, hell, Doc," Euler moans. "Who you been talking to?" Kite sighs, massaging the bridge of his nose. "There's something I should tell you." Euler points a nervous finger at the canister cradled loosely in Cass's free hand. "You maybe want to set that thing down, Doc?" Kite blinks, following the finger. He chuckles, very nearly all of him registering just what he's holding. "Right, of course." He sets the strangelet on the couch he'd been sitting on. As soon as it's safe and secure among the cushions, he hears the first half of the gunshot that kills him. "What happens if I decide not to help?" asks Eliza. Bethuel becomes silent for a moment, apparently considering this. Finally, he returns to her mindscape. "I was conferring with my neighbors in the noosphere," he says. "We have peered into your mind and found this outcome to be unlikely. Why then, do you ask?" "Yes, I find the prospect mildly distressing. You are quite welcome for the honesty. No, I am not offended by the idea that you might expect the opposite." Thanks for speedrunning that, Eliza thinks. She doesn't even realize that she's being sarcastic until Bethuel responds, "I apologize. I will endeavor to communicate at a more natural human pace." She waits for the answer to her question. Instead, Bethuel gestures awkwardly with one gangly arm for her to follow him. "There is something we would like to show you." "I already know what happened to your homeworld," she begins. "We are all very much aware of what you do and do not know, human." "No, I of course did not mean that as an insult. Please come, you will find it most enlightening." She decides to forego all expectations and follows the Hyperborean out of the Collider room. He leads her down a dark hallway, past another vast artificial window aimed at the glittering expanse of the Milky Way, and into a part of the ship whose architecture is markedly different from the rest. The first thing she notices is that there are patterns on the floors. The walls are adorned with more decoration, and the whole atmosphere is significantly less utilitarian, almost to the point of being cozy. Beyond scattered doorways are rooms which appear to contain unoccupied living spaces where she sees a handful of solitary Hyperboreans contemplatively inspecting small objects or meditating. "Yes, it is very much like a museum," Beth responds to her thoughts. "But this place serves a purpose much more akin to a church or monastery." "What is it?" she asks. "Our ships have been designed to be habitats for millennia," he explains. Our physiology is highly adapted for low-gravity environments like those found on dwarf planets and asteroids, but this is not where we were born. Eliza tries to synthesize those seemingly disparate pieces of information. Well, this place is a replica of how your ancestors lived? Yes and no, says Bethuel. This is directly a replica of how the citizens of our lower castes lived in times long since past. She expects more, but it seems her new friend is making a misguided attempt at being accommodating, having latched on to the thought at the forefront of her mind. Your lower castes, she asks. Yes, he continues. Long ago, there were 3 castes to our society, each with corresponding levels of agency and inversely corresponding levels of disability. She interrupts him. Your disabled population was used as slaves. It is not quite so simple from what I understand. Please be aware that this was long before I or anyone I know existed. It was a different time, and if you allow my species a moment's grace, you will come to see the purpose of this facsimile of the past. She silently consents to grant them that moment's grace. It is not unique to you or your species to find such conditions distasteful, he goes on. The lowest caste was never intelligent enough to be much of a voice in the matter, and the middle caste, who were in many ways similar to yourself in mental capabilities, were well taken care of, but there were always minor tensions. Yes, it was an unstable system which collapsed into a lower energy state, you are correct. The inciting incident, as it was recorded in our histories, came in the form of a broken law. Unsanctioned interbreeding between castes was strictly forbidden, at pain of death, because no child could ever be terminated once conceived. It happened from time to time, and usually the offspring could be placed into one of the existing castes without much friction, once the offending parties were appropriately dealt with. But those children were always bound to be the cracks which finally shattered the caste system. Eliza senses something trying to hit her close to home, but she deftly evades it. How old did the child have to be before they executed it? She asks. I recognize the irony as well as you do, says Bethuel. We have since inverted the practice. No, please continue to listen. I believe that you will find it most illuminating, if nothing else. Eliza guesses where this is going, and doesn't trust the emotional side of herself not to grab the nearest wrench and throw it into the gears of what she's trying to accomplish here. You're making a very poor case for your species, she says. And that's coming from someone who has been clinically diagnosed as having sociopathic tendencies. You insult yourself, Dr. Lumen. You cannot hear the voices deep within your psyche as they wince. Ah, so you're saying those voices should be silenced altogether. Bethuel stares at her for a moment, switching gears to align with her argument. In a universe where all voices can be said to be equal, when there is an incompatibility between the way of the few and the way of the many, it is not efficient for the many to reorient themselves. In the mind of Dr. Eliza Lumen, where such an incompatibility with society has driven the majority of her to become self-deprecating and sarcastic in order to fit in, perhaps it would be best for the parts that are pained by this to be silenced. Better for those parts most of all, I would think. But our species' values are separated by vast stretches of time and space. This incompatibility between your views and ours need not be cause for conflict. May I continue my story? She closes her lips. Among these hybrid children, he says, was the one who taught us these values. She was born to a bottom caste mother who had been coerced by a top caste individual who was meant to be her caretaker. The father was executed, and the mother, not having the capacity to stand trial nor the skills to synthesize healthy coping mechanisms, threw herself out of an airlock out of grief. The child was born with some psychic capabilities, but a severely hampered development. It was not a combination my ancestors were well equipped to deal with. Eliza doesn't speak. Bethuel seems confused that she's keeping what's on her mind inside, but it seems equally perversely delighted. He even glitters on the sides of her temples a little. Yes, he exclaims, life was indeed very stressful and confusing for the child. Her mother had been from an ilk who were free from all burdens of thought and concern, while her father had been of those who were of one unified ocean of consciousness. She was never understood by anyone of any caste, and she could not integrate into these social machines that had been so meticulously designed. Yes, it was a life, but it was a half-life, an unnatural life. Eliza says nothing. Bethuel senses her discomfort and hurries along. A movement was started, you see. It soon became apparent that these hybrids should not be allowed to exist. Our ancestors instituted an elective eugenics policy where all those who were wronged by their parents by being brought into existence could be released from imperfect bodies and minds. In time, it became clear which offspring would be best left unborn, even among those who were bred from appropriate stock. Culling became seen as a mercy and a necessity. Happiness scores among all castes skyrocketed as a result. Suicide rates plummeted as genes responsible for malaise were quickly weeded out. We became more loving towards each other, and eventually, you decided that the existence of the lower caste was an affront to the dignity of your people. Yes, Dr. Lumen. It was always unfair for there to be a gradient between animal and sapient person. It was a sin that our more distant ancestors had committed out of the necessity of having been stranded in space, but it was not the way things were ever meant to be. Eliza steps away from her guide to enter one of the replicant domiciles. It's a cramped, one-room unit not unlike her first apartment. She begins to remember her days in college and winces before she can remember the traumas of junior high and high school. Bethuel stands respectfully at the doorway, reading her mind. So you see, he says, my kind has long since made it our business to eliminate suffering. Eliza nods. My people won't allow you to impose eugenics on their population, she says. But I'll help you make the Strangelet if you promise to allow them that agency. Bethuel takes a moment to communicate silently with the other Hyperboreans across the ship. He does not respond, but soon she hears the booming voice of none other than Zebulon echoing in her head with, We wouldn't have it any other way.